Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to Practicing Love. You all know me. If those of you who don't, my name is TJ Moonen. I'll be your host tonight. First time solo. I was kind of nervous about it, but then I realized, hey, it's not about me. It's about the families and the children and fighting the corruption to save the children and the families. We got a lot to get into tonight, so I don't want to bore you with anything right now. I'll bore you at the end of the show with the major stuff that we have coming up and the big events that are going on throughout the movement later on in the show. But right now, I'm very excited to have our guest on tonight. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, been a crazy month really for Practicing Love. A lot of changes, a lot of troubles that we've worked out along the way, and you know, I find that if you look for the solution, the problem will go away. And today's solution is a good friend. Although we've just started recently talking, he's a great man. I think we've gotten pretty close over the last 4 or 5 days chatting, and I'm real excited to have him here, and we're going to give you an awesome show. So be prepared to be educated, and just keep in mind that the views that we express are those of mine and Chris alone. We're not trying to practice law in any way. This just our opinion based on our experience. So with that, I want to bring in our guest tonight, Christopher Marks. Christopher, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. TJ, it's great to talk to you again.
Hey, welcome. It's been a lot of fun getting you on the air today. I can't thank you enough for stepping up and showing up for me in the show. It's really big of you. We've talked a lot over the last few days about a great many things. You've got your hands in a lot of pots, and it's very impressive. But before we get into the nitty gritty, you want to give us just a brief history on your family, your children, and where you're at in your life situation?
Well, quite frankly, what it comes down to is I'm a non-custodial parent and a father of 4 children, and you know, throughout your life, I think we all try to establish families, and when the relationship doesn't work out, we continue trying to find that family that we also deeply desire. And with the first 2 mothers of my children, I never had a desire or felt the need to actually fight for custody of my child, because, well, me and the mothers didn't necessarily get along 100% of the time. Most times it was because we disagreed on our parenting styles. I had the comfort of at least knowing that they were good mothers and that my children were safe with them. However, my youngest child, unfortunately, I can't say that I had the same confidence in his mother.
Interesting.
So when I started noticing that my son was exhibiting behaviors that led me to believe that there was some form of child abuse occurring with him, I decided to step up, filed for child support against myself to secure my parental rights and see my child. And then when that didn't work out because the mother wouldn't follow the court orders, I decided to go ahead and fight for custody of my son because he started exhibiting these behaviors of being abused. As with everybody, my case is on merit is no different than anybody else.
Yeah.
The court ran me through the ringer. They financially sanctioned me into poverty, and when I wasn't able to actually maintain those payments, they started trying to hold me in contempt of court. As with all family court matters, the attorney of the mother promoted controversy to actually, and so did the judge for that matter, by not enforcing the law. And as that continued to affect my life. I ended up losing my job because the state of Indiana threatened to sue my employer because I wouldn't consent to the state committing felony theft.
Nice.
And the reason why that was felony theft was because at that point in time, the Indiana Department of Child Services actually substantiated that the mother had in fact strangled him and had committed battery against him at 3.5 years old.
Wow.
So in Indiana, if your child's held in the state's custody for 15 months, according to their Indiana statute, they can terminate your parental rights and then forcibly adopt your child out for approximately $40,000. And I don't know about you, but that's human trafficking, clear cut.
Kidnapping, legal kidnapping.
Yeah, it's kidnapping, and it is human trafficking.
Absolutely.
Or with the intent of human trafficking. What a lot of people don't know is that the reason why the states actually do this is because the United States itself is actually mismanaging the people's Social Security monies, because the Social Security program itself is actually a trust fund, and the United States is the trustee, and the people are the trustor of those monies. And a proper management of those monies would be the United States actually paying the trustor, the people, kind of like when, the elderly become retired and they start collecting Social Security. Mm-hmm. That's a proper management of the Social Security system by the United States. The United States writes and issues a check to the people. However, when the United States actually then turns around and actually writes a check out to the state, and the state then siphons off their own cut of that, and then diverts money off to one of these service providers that they try to order you to do to get into business with. Essentially, they're converting your right to parent your child into a pay-per-view event.
Yeah, sad. That's a sad statement. But you're right.
In that regard, I will stand. I did and will continue to stand in direct opposition to any mismanagement of the people's Social Security funds, especially when you're human trafficking children.
Absolutely. What bothers me the most about this whole thing is it's mind-blowing if you think about it. Every state and even the federal government have a child support enforcement agency, and there's not a visitation enforcement agency anywhere. Now, it's very plain to see that this is all about the money for the family courts, for the politicians leading on up, all the way straight up to Title IV, Title IV-D, the Bradley Amendment, the Family Protection Act. It's all corruption, and that's what we need to get out there.
Exactly, and that's why I actually took the time out. Within my time in the parental rights movement, I have known more than my fair share of parents, non-custodial parents, that have ended up committing suicide because of this domestic terrorism that the state puts the people through in violation of the law.
Yeah.
And I can't stand it. And then I started looking at my own life, and I started seeing the similarities. And when I understood the pattern of criminal activity of the state, I was able to start seeing what was going to happen next to me.
Right.
And as my life was continued to be dragged through the ringer through these courts, I decided, you know what, the best way to actually address this is come up with a solution. So many people are out there talking about the problem, but nobody seems to have a solution, or they have an idea, but I don't believe that they actually go hard enough.
Yeah.
Why didn't I draft a 50-50 legislation instead? We've got enough of those.
Absolutely.
I even think that those are a little bit on the soft side. But 50-50 legislation is essentially the people, through legislation, attempting to dictate to the judges how they are going to do their job.
Right.
And the sad truth is you have these judges, these clowns wearing a black bed sheet, sitting up there, and they actually are directly involved in actually violating statutory law, or violate, even if you bring in Supreme Court rulings and case law that actually proves that they have to do their job a certain way, they're going to continue to break the law. And the reason why they do it is because the judiciary itself granted their judges absolute immunity.
Exactly.
In the federal courts, even, you will have these judges, these federal court judges, when you actually bring civil suit against them, against other parties, including these judges, and you clearly establish that these judges are not acting within their official capacity. Because for them to act within their official capacity would mean that they would actually have to not violate a statutory law.
Go figure.
For their rules.
It's crazy. What a wacky system, and it's all set up to destroy families. The way I see it, I mean, from my point of view. And I know the money is. I'm sorry, Chris. I know the money is funneled elsewhere, other than family court services, but it's the main problem, from my point of view. It's destroying families. I'm sorry. Go on.
Oh, I definitely agree. And so ultimately, the approach that I took was I wasn't going to hold back any punches. I was going to call it out exactly what it is.
Oh.
And I was going to name all of the body politic parties, the states in the United States, and how their bad actors are actually essentially committing second-degree murder of parents because they fail to act. They fail to secure the parents' rights. That's right. And they instead will actually spend a significant amount of time actually harassing the parents. Yeah. And what you end up having, what the approach that I took with it is, I can't control these judges. Nobody can. No. These people are completely off the chain. So what you have to do is you have to control the money that is actually incentivizing this criminal activity.
Yep. Exactly, and it blows my mind that
what the Parental Suicide Prevention Act does.
Okay, yeah, I definitely want to get into that, but I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But now that you mentioned that, I do want to discuss that. Chris is the author of the Parental Suicide Prevention Act. Why don't you share what that's all about, Chris?
Well, the Parental Suicide Prevention Act outlines this pattern of pattern of activity that is criminal in nature, in that it is a racketeering activity.
Nice.
And it's all about extorting as much money as possible from the people individually, as well as through the people's Social Security funds. The first and foremost step in the racketeering activities is that the state deprives one parent of their rights, and they convert them into a visitor to their child. They financially sanction that non-custodial parent into poverty. Then they follow up and they set the child support obligation outside of the legal limit. When you cannot continue to actually pay this child support obligation that the state has determined that you owe, then they start attempting to hold you in contempt of court.
Right.
They'll suspend your license. Here in Indiana, it takes $350. You have to pay the Bureau of Motor Vehicles $350 to actually have your license unsuspended. And if you have multiple child support obligations, and those multiple child support obligations actually each county suspends your license, that means that you have to actually get your license unsuspended through each county's Department of Child Services. So, like personally in my case, my license has been suspended twice. If you have professional licenses, such as the license to practice medicine, or something along those lines, right, they will actually suspend your professional license. They will continue to refuse to actually modify the child support obligation, even knowing that you clearly can't afford to pay this child support obligation that they've established.
Right.
They continue to promote the controversy. Then at some point in time, they actually get you locked in a box, hold you
Right.
in contempt of court, incarcerate you. Now, you clearly can't maintain employment when you're actually in jail.
Right. Right.
So you become incarcerated, then you lose your job, lose your home, lose all of your assets.
Yeah.
But the state will continue to harass you,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous in nature, on the base nature, because essentially for the state to actually even hold you in contempt of court, they have to prove that you are willfully committing contempt of court.
Right.
As in, you have the assets to pay the obligation, but you are willfully refusing to do so.
Right. Right. And even if you don't.
Without probable cause, they drag you into these contempt hearings, hold you in contempt of court, and this ultimately ends up with a very extreme case of deprivation of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
Not to mention due process.
And this ends up, what?
Not to mention due process. There is no due process in family court.
Absolutely. And it does not, in the state and these attorneys, because they're playing this game and they're playing on the legal incompetency of the people, they tell you that lie. They tell you, oh, well, this is a civil matter. They don't have to follow due process. Well, you're right in the regard that the people don't have to follow due process. Due process locks the state in. But the mere moment that the judge deprives you of your rights to your child and converts you into a visitor, they've committed a due process violation, and they've committed a violation, and they've committed a felony violation of deprivation of rights under color of law.
Right. Right. There's a difference between civil and community criminal, and they don't seem to know how to decipher that. Sad.
Well, even in that, it's because the judge is a state employee. The judge must secure your rights. I mean, it's very clear in their oath of office. Their oath of office, a judicial oath of office, has 3 clauses. The first clause is to protect and secure the Constitution of the United States of America. The second one is to protect and secure the state's constitution. And then the third part is to actually maintain impartiality in all matters. Because if they don't maintain impartiality, then they've committed a violation of, they've established a conflict of interest.
Right.
And as soon as any 3 of those clauses of their judicial oath of office is in violation, they lose standing as the judge. Now, you can prove this in a court of law, but no judge will actually ever uphold and hold another judge accountable because of this assumed judicial immunity.
It's
Absolute immunity. And it's sick.
It's sick.
Because while they're protecting the state's racketeering activities, there are parents and children that are being negatively impacted. I know myself, I will never be the same after what I've gone through.
No.
And I know that my child will never be the same after what he's gone through.
Right.
But what I can do is I can stand in direct opposition to this, and I can bring public awareness, and I can bring education to the people.
Right.
And through that, I can hopefully ensure that my grandchildren never will be able to never have the opportunity of even going through this domestic terrorism and tyranny of the state.
Yeah. Amen, brother. Amen. That's what the war is for now. The battles happen and we persevere. And it's warriors like yourself that make the movement great. And it's amazing what you're doing, Chris. The work you're doing with Tom O'Donnell and and all your Native American activity. Can you share a little bit about Tom O'Donnell? I know he's talking about the education process
Oh, absolutely. That guy has got a great program going on. He's got a non-for-profit organization, and currently his non-for-profit organization is actually pushing to modify the way that the Board of Education is in teaching our children. And his focus is on economics currently.
Right.
In that in economics classes, the state is actually through their Board of Education is teaching our children a lot. They're teaching our children that land is a scarcity and energy is a scarcity. Because of this scarcity, it's got such a high value because it's been converted into a commodity.
Right.
And that scarcity is the reasoning why. And as he points out, you can get on a plane and you can fly from the East Coast and the West Coast and look outside the window, and you can actually see miles and miles and miles of unused land in regards to housing.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the fact that it has been statistically proven there are more vacant houses in the United States of America, all across this nation, than there are, in fact, homeless people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad. Yeah.
These are houses that are sitting empty, not being used, and we as a society, a supposed civilized society, allow these homeless people to live on the street.
Yeah.
Even food, they teach our children is a scarcity, and that's an absolute lie.
Right.
I know for a fact that I think about like 2-3 years ago, I read a report that said that Americans in their homes alone throw away 40% of their food as waste, and it's still good.
Yeah. Yeah. You see so much of it happen. I work in a convenience store, and we throw away donuts every day that can perfectly be given to as next day donuts to a shelter or a soup kitchen or something like that. We have a soup kitchen here in Derry. I would love to be able to do that too, but it's not allowed because of health board reasons. Everything's gotten so legal. It's just everything's just so legal.
Well,
it's scary.
Yeah, exactly. And when you that's why when I've actually been asked as a presidential candidate for the 2020 election year, I've actually been asked several times my opinion in regard to the legalization of marijuana.
Right.
Okay. And now I'm not advocating for marijuana use or any drug use for that matter at all. Matter of fact, I don't even practice Western medicine because of my Native American cultural beliefs.
Right.
I'm not going to put that poison in me. But you have a plant, first off, that last time I checked the Constitution of the United States of America, which grants the government the limited privilege to govern, I can't find any limited privilege to govern over a plant. Now, anytime you talk legalization, you're talking about regulation.
Right.
The government doesn't have the privilege, the limited privilege to regulate a plant. They can't regulate your tomatoes. They can't regulate your corn. They can't do anything along those lines.
Right.
So when I'm asked, what is my opinion on legalizing marijuana? Absolutely, I will not legalize marijuana, because to legalize it would be to regulate it, and to regulate it would mean that the state is generating revenue off of a plant that is naturally growing. I also wouldn't legalize tomatoes, nor would I legalize corn, et cetera, et cetera. The daisies are free from legislation, I assure you that.
Let me ask you this, Chris, about as far as that's concerned. Now, marijuana is a plant, but it could also be construed as a medication. Could it not be regulated as that?
No.
No. Okay, I wasn't sure.
I mean, it's a naturally occurring process. Now,
Right.
when you start talking about like opiates, methamphetamine, stuff along those lines, things that actually have have a practice or a process to actually convert it from a natural state, if it ever existed in a natural state, into a marketable product, then okay, I guess you can legalize that in the medical industry. But quite frankly, my mindset is that the overwhelming problems that we have all across this country is state involvement. I've never been married. Why? Because I don't believe that the state has any involvement in my personal relationships. Just like I don't believe that the state has the right. No, the state has no rights. No. I don't believe that the state has the limited privilege to determine my rights.
Right.
Which is what you find in the child's best interest doctrine, which coincidentally was adopted from Hitler's social welfare program and is explained in Mein Kampf. But I'm sure that Hitler was actually a really nice guy, and the United States is doing great things for the overall outlook for the American people in that regard. But the Constitution, but their judicial oath of office doesn't grant them the privilege to determine anybody's rights.
Yeah.
It's very clear in there that they are to secure the people's rights.
Right.
That means you come in, you explain the right to this thing, to the child, or whatever it is that you're arguing that you have a right to. And the state's job, these judicial officers' job, is to secure your right. You don't have even the privilege to determine your right based off of their own oath of office.
Absolutely. Okay, we got a little bit off track there. I want to get back to Tom O'Donnell just briefly. I just want to let the viewers know, if any of you want to know more information, send a request to practicinglove143@gmail.com, and myself, Chris, or one of the team members will get that information out to you. Anyways, back to our discussion.
Well, yeah, with Tom, essentially what he's doing is he's actually taking this fraud that the state is actually, through their Board of Education, is teaching our children, and he's bringing public awareness to it. And he's starting out with economics. But I encouraged him to consider looking into other avenues as well, such as history, government, stuff along those lines. And the great thing about what he's doing is the fact that he's actually bringing this public awareness to the Board of Education as well as the people. And he's doing it based off of a curriculum that is actually established by the state to teach our children.
Okay.
And I think that that is a beautiful thing, because while he's starting with economics, he can then move into the other areas that are being fraudulently taught to our children.
Right.
Education is paramount to the freedom and the liberty of this country.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, we're covering a lot of time here. I want to get into just briefly a little bit about your Native American heritage. I know you told me your grandfather's name. I can't remember it now. I know your son was Little Wolf. My grandfather was actually, my family actually descends down from the war chief line of the Miami people. Going all the way back to Chief Little Turtle. Chief Little Turtle, that's what it was.
And
I love that.
Huh?
I love that. Little Turtle. I love it. Chief Little Turtle.
Yeah. He was an amazing man.
Yeah.
Actually, I even found a government military document that actually says that Chief Little Turtle was the creator of the concept of the decoy in military practices.
Right.
Essentially, what Chief Little Turtle did was, as the war chief of our people, he analyzed the colonists, and he saw them doing their flanking technique, and he noticed, wow, that's actually an impressive technique. We traditionally did what we called hit and run tactics, where we would actually run from one area and we'd hit you and then keep going. And then if you didn't give chase, we'd turn around and then we'd hit you again until you gave chase, and then we'd pretty much bottleneck you. And, well, we would actually turn around. We'd get you in a glade or something along those lines, a clearing, and then we would kind of kill everybody except for one.
Right.
When he saw this flanking technique that came over from Europe, he actually used his hit and run tactic to actually draw in the opposing force into the middle of a flank, and then they would actually close in, bottleneck him in the middle, and then just kill everybody but one. We traditionally, my people actually like to leave one survivor so they could go back and tell the story about the great warrior prowess of the Miami Nation.
It's absolutely amazing. You know, I talked, like I said, me and Chris talked a lot over the last few days, and he shared a lot of stories with me, and we've been, the stuff that he shared with me is just absolutely amazing. I have no Native American blood in me, but I have a strong affinity for Native Americans, a man who I consider the closest thing I've ever had to a father, besides my father, was 100% Cherokee, and he was a very strong. He taught me how to be a man, basically, how to be a responsible adult. But anyways, Chris and I were also talking, and we'll be doing a show here on Practicing Love in October. It's going to be the season finale, actually, and it's going to be focused on Native American issues, treaties, the Constitution, the way different tribes are treated and live. There'll be a whole array of issues. I mean, that's just in the starting process of getting developed at this point, but I want to thank you, Chris, for putting that in my ear. That's a great idea, and probably the most impoverished group of people in this country are the Native Americans, and that needs to be known.
Absolutely. Statistically, the Native American population, per the U.S. Census Bureau, is the lowest percentile minority group.
Yeah.
As in, they are the smallest minority group of people in their own territorial lands, as well as being some of the most impoverished people.
Yeah, absolutely. I've
in
been
this country, and you have to look at that and go, there is something strongly, seriously wrong in this country in that regard. But I mean, I'm not trying to hold Native Americans above anybody else. Matter of fact, I am a devout believer that unification of the people, Native Americans with the American people, is what it's going to take to actually correct this country.
Yep.
As well as a firm understanding in regard to the truth of history, education in the law, and just empowering the people in general all across this nation. We have the abilities to actually make a change in this country, and it takes utilizing and securing your freedom of speech.
Absolutely. Christopher Marks, I cannot thank you enough for being here today. You've really come through. You're an amazing man, and I hope that we'll be doing this again in the future. In fact, I'm hoping you'll be around in October when we do the Native American show. I just want to say thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And the whole production team is so grateful for you stepping up in our time of need. And you're a great man, and I look forward to working with you in the future along with the others in the movement. All right? Keep
Absolutely.
fighting.
And as always, remember, love and support and encourage.
That's it. You got it, brother. I love that. That's Chris's motto. Thanks, Chris, and I'll definitely be talking to you later today. All right, bro?
Thank you.
All right,
Great
lots of love.
talking to you, TJ.
Lots of love, bro.
Alrighty.
Bye. All right.
Lots of love. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Chris is a very intelligent man, and I really wanted to get into his presidential campaign, but time is of the essence. I just have a few things that I want to get into. First, I want to welcome a new member of our production team. Joining us today in the control room is Miss Brittany Indosio. She is a very close friend of mine. In fact, I consider her one of my other daughters. She's going to come on board and learn the process. She's going to take a class with me next week, and we're going to get her as heavily involved as we can, as heavily involved as she wants to be. She's a good kid and is looking for a better future, and I hope we can help her to find that. Some of the things going on in the movement, congratulations, Tony Maddox down in San Antonio for getting getting a new job. I'm just so proud of you and all the work that you're doing. And I know Rowan's proud. Rowan's watching you. Keep up the good work, kid. Greg Fedor. I want to talk a little bit about Greg. He was going to be our co-host, and he had the same issue come up after the last time he was on the show as he did the first time he was on the show. And believe me, I was kind of getting a complex about it, but it is a serious thing, and he's going through a very difficult time, battling the dark side, the darkest side of family law. And I just want to let you know, Greg, that we're thinking about you. We love you. We're behind you 100%. And I ask everyone to send prayers out to Greg and his boys, Paul and Benjamin. Keep them in your prayers, and keep fighting, Greg. You're still a great warrior, and you got this. I know you do. All right. Other stuff going on. Let's see. Future episodes. Let me explain to you what we have coming on. We talked about with Chris about the Native American show in October. Now that's going to be exciting, and we'll be previewing that throughout the summer with different guests. Cash Jackson will be here. Tanya Myers. I'm hoping to talk to J. Morgan Firecloud. Some other friends of mine that are Native Americans. Maybe I can get Melody Pate up here or on the show. So I look forward to that. For the next couple of weeks, actually 2 weeks from now, oh yeah, by the way, June 20th, we're going to be doing Bubbles of Love. It's normally an event that's held in April, but due to the weather conditions in April, we were unable to do it at that time. So we scheduled it for a time when there's a better shot of good weather, the end of June. So June 20th, we'll be doing that. And the best part about that is last week, Babette Fitzgerald and I took a course on remote shoots. So we'll be actually taping an episode. Our next taping will be the Bubbles of Love episode. We will be doing a taping next week, but what it's going to be is a group of interviews that will be episodes shown the following weeks. And then in July and August, we're looking at doing an international show. I have people in 7 different countries I've been speaking with. I'm hoping to get them all to come on the show in one way or another, either through phone or video. We're going to set that up over the next couple of months. I'm really excited about it. Can't thank Judith Atkins enough for helping with that, and the Parent Speak group. And I'm really, really excited about what's going on. You know, this is going to be an amazing ride, and it's only going to get better. You know, I'm excited. The team is excited, and I think you should all be excited. So with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in, and I can't thank you enough for all of your love and support. And remember, love is just a word until you give it meaning.